Warm welcome to the Royal Palace and the Bernadotte Library. Here you will find over 100,000 books, a collection that used to belong to previous kings and queens of the House of Bernadotte, offering a glimpse into their history and interests. However, today we're here to listen to our esteemed Nobel laureates, to their insights, their expertise, and their invaluable contributions to science and economics. Once again, a very warm welcome to the Royal Palace.
Ain't it fun? Baby, now you're one of us. Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Living in the real world. Ain't it good? Ain't it good? Yeah.
Yo, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm your host, JLW, and welcome to Stand on Business, episode 40. Real quick, the Nobel Prize's purpose is to recognize individuals and organizations that have made outstanding contributions in three spaces. I'm saying three because that's what I'm showing. I don't know if it's just three, but I see science, humanism, and peace. In those categories, we have physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, peace, and economic sciences. So it should be nice to hear just a grown-up conversation with y'all, and I thank y'all for joining me for this one. And make sure that you share your thoughts on this video in the comment sections below, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to continue this healthy discussion of things that are going on in the world, in particular AI, as told to us by those who have won the Nobel Peace Prize for being great, and it is what they do. So I'm going to stop talking because I ain't win a prize. At least I don't think so. I ain't get my wreath in the mail, so
by some of your family and friends, as well as students from here in Stockholm. Before we start, let's just give them a really big round of applause. Renewed congratulations to all of you. Let's turn now to the awards that were made this year, and let's start with the Physics Prize, and here's a brief summary of the research behind that prize.
This year's Physics Prize rewards research that laid the foundations for the development of AI, enabling machine learning with artificial neural networks. John Hopfield created a structure that can store and reconstruct information. Geoffrey Hinton built on his ideas and made it possible to create completely new content with the help of AI, so-called generative AI. This opens up numerous potential areas of use, for instance by providing techniques for calculating and predicting the properties of molecules and materials. Their research has also prompted extensive discussion of the ethics around how the technology is developed and used.
So, Geoffrey Hinton, you actually wanted to find out how the human brain works. So, how does it work?
We still don't know. We've made lots of efforts to figure out how the brain figures out how to change the strength of connections between two neurons. We've learned a lot from these big systems that we've built, which is if you could find any way to know whether you should increase or decrease the strength, and then you just did that for all of the connections, all 100 trillion connections, and you just kept doing that with lots of examples, slightly increasing or decreasing the strength, then you would get fantastic systems like GPT-4.
And I think we'll end up in the next phase where we'll start using these AI models to analyze our own brains and to help with neuroscience as one of the sciences that AI helps with. So actually, I think it's going to come sort of full circle. Neuroscience has sort of inspired modern AI, and then AI will come back and help us, I think, understand what's special about the brain.
Will machine intelligence outsmart humans? I mean, what kind of time frame are you talking about? Are you saying it's already happened?
So, in terms of the amount of knowledge you can have in one system, it's clearly already happened.
Right.
GPT-4 knows much more than any human.
Yeah.
And it does make stuff up, but it still knows a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of the timing, I think all the leading experts I know, people like Demis, they believe it's going to happen. They believe these machines are going to get smarter than people at general intelligence. And they just differ in how long they think that's going to take.
Well, we're going to start being bossed around by machines and robots. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, that's the question. Can you have things more intelligent than you and you still stay in control? Once they're more intelligent than us, will they be the bosses, or will we still be the bosses?
And what do you think?
I think we need to do a lot of research right now on how we remain the bosses.
If everybody in this room is in agreement that AI is going to be smarter than everybody in this room and everybody on this planet, do you not think that those things would then want to rule? How can you control something? How can you tell something that you're the boss and it knows it's smarter than you? In theory, I guess that the next logical jump is knows that it's better suited than you to be in power or in control because I'm smarter than you. I'm more intellectual. We've got individuals now in the White House and in this new government group, Doge, that think they're smarter than everybody else and we can't control them. So how the hell are you going to tell a machine that we deserve to be in charge and you deserve to listen to us? Then why do it? If you know for a fact that the thing that you're creating, right, it'd be like God knowing that as I'm creating humans, they're one day going to want to take over my throne. Why still then create humans? At least that's my thinking. And I guess it's more of a philosophical question, right? There's no real answer to it other than scientists would say that because there's so much more positives to this development of this thing, then you would keep doing it, right? For the sake of science would be the answer. Versus, I guess, the innovator, like the Musk types would do it just because you get to put your name in the history books and be the guy who was the first to build this thing and, you forever go down in history. But then my rebuttal to that is, what does history mean if you end up, lost in the fires of the robot uprising, which is the extreme. I understand that is the extreme example, but it's still fascinating to me that the smartest people in the rooms can all universally agree that the thing that people are working on in tech is one day going to be smarter than those who created it. Because I think sometimes that's what some of these innovators are also kind of in search of, or not even in search of, but kind of desire. I think there are those individuals who are kind of looking for that next step in the human evolution. They want to jumpstart it, and part of them might think that AI and what that could mean in terms of bridging those two capabilities, the augmentation to human using technology like AI, could bring us to that next step of evolution, and they want to be the ones that bring that change, or they just want to see something different. They don't believe what we have right now is working or will continue to work. So, all right, we've had our thoughts. Let's move on.
Humans, since the beginning of civilization, have created things that are better at them than in almost every domain. Cars can go infinitely faster. Planes can fly. Humans can't. For a long time, we've had computers that can do calculations that humans can't do. Demis has developed, programs that solve Go and chess. So we're very comfortable, I think, with machines being able to do things that we can't do. GPT-4 has much more knowledge than any human being. I think we just take this kind of thing in stride. I don't think we worry about losing control. So I guess
that's the key issue, that we know that computers can do a lot that we can't. But it's this question of control. Because planes fly, but it's the human pilot who's in the cockpit.
That's right.
Assisted by technology, obviously, and we still drive cars.
Yeah.
What about you two? The Economist.
No, I hate that we just left that question there because he brought up a good point in that there's a lot of technology that is better at us than things. Like the car example, okay, yes, it goes faster. It was made. So, of course, there's technology that specifically does something that's better than us, but we're not talking about something that's particularly good at one thing. We're talking about something that is universally as close to human conscious as possible. That to me is the sole difference. We're not talking about building something that's really good at metal making. We're not talking about building something that's really good at building. We're not talking about something that's really good at flying. We're talking about something that can do and think like a human and thus be better at being a human than us. That, I think, was more speaks to the fear of people and the replacement and, again, the control that she had mentioned. But we kind of moved off that point, so I guess we'll just let that go.
Do you stand on this question?
I'll take the opposite position to Gary. I think humans are incredibly underrated right now. Human adaptability, fluidity, creativity, but also community. I think humans are just amazing social animals. We learn as collectives, and as collectives we are able to do a huge number of things in very quick succession. So I would worry about those people controlling AI before AI itself turning on us. Humankind's greatest enemy is humankind.
The sort of Dr. Evils that we see in popular science fiction.
Or Dr. Do-goods who think they're doing good.
The road to hell is paved in what? That's all he's saying to me. I had to say that real point because to me, he's the one that makes the most sense. We're not talking about this hypothetical of making a good world. We're not talking about this hypothetical of doing things that can enhance and make things better for us. We're talking about a world where we don't know what we're stumbling into and nobody's really giving the proper care or guidance to it because it's moving so fast and nobody wants to be left behind. That individual is the one that I want to sit down and talk with. And I like his line about humans being underrated. And there's something to be said about even if there is a robot uprising, some of the greatest feats that happen in humanity is through trauma and trial, which is why there's some books that say that, what is it, the fourth turning point or something like that. There's something that talks about that history happens in cycles. And when people are at their most separated, they're most disagreeable, the division is at its highest, you need a unifying event, something catastrophic, something that either external or internally forces humans to band together and find that they have more good than bad. So a robot uprising would, in theory, fit the criteria of something that would force humans to come together and overcome and thrive. I just think that at the end of the day, if we were to get to that point, humanity has never faced a threat on that scale of danger. I'm done talking.
But I'm a big believer in human ingenuity. And as David says, we're unbelievably adaptive as a species. And, look at our modern technology we already use today that we sort of seamlessly, the younger generation just seamlessly adapts to and takes as a given. And I think that's also happened with these chatbots, which, 25 years ago, we would have been amazed, those of us in the era of AI, if you were to transport the technologies back we have today, back then. And yet we've all, society seems to have sort of seamlessly adapted to that as well.
Jeffrey.
Before she begins, I just want to say this real quick note about his point because I agree that we are extremely adaptable. And at the end of the day, I would put more faith in humanity than I would in the robots. However, the thought of us just seamlessly adopting all of these tools and technology that have been great, on a universal scale or on a grand scale, again, that seems to be the case. But if we were to look at not even a minuscule scale, but just like your neighborhood scale, right? The individuals that we're most concerned with, it seems like, when you look at media or politicians right now, is children and how something as simple as social media has negatively affected them. And people are still trying to come to grips with how do we balance this wealth of information that's out there that has now been corrupted with disinformation and misinformation, and then also just the body shaming and the social critique that has come with social media. And we haven't gotten a grasp on that. And again, that is just one thing that was meant to do one thing, right? Wasn't supposed to simulate human consciousness. This one thing was just a way for people to access information, right? And that is already severely affected, as we're told, the youth, which is why you got Florida passing laws that are saying that if you're under the age of 14, 15, 16, you can no longer go on social media. So just to say that humans have done so well at integrating this technology into our daily lives, and he didn't say no effects. I put words in his mouth at that point, but I'm just saying that there are issues we've already seen with these technologies we have. What are the issues with something that, again, is supposed to simulate human consciousness? Not saying it's there yet, but if that's the ultimate goal and we know it's supposed to be smarter, you're all agreeing, all these smart people are agreeing that it's going to be smarter than us. What are the negative effects of that you can't plan or control for?
Hinton, do you see that happening? You've raised the alarm bells about humans becoming subservient in a way to machines. Do you think that there's enough of a debate at an international level? Do we need more ethics in science to debate these kind of issues? Do you see that happening? So
I want to distinguish two kinds of risks from AI. One is relatively short-term, and that's to do with bad actors, and that's much more urgent. That's going to be obvious with lethal autonomous weapons, which all the big defense departments are developing, and they have no intention of not doing it. The European regulations on AI say none of these regulations apply to military uses of AI, so they clearly intend to go ahead with all that. And there's many other short-term risks like cybercrime, generating bad pathogens, fake videos, surveillance. All of those short-term risks are very serious, and we need to take them seriously. And it's going to be very hard to get collaboration on those. Then the long-term risk that these things will get more intelligent than us, and they'll be agents, they'll act in the world, and they'll decide that they can achieve their goals better, which we gave them the goals, and they can achieve them better if they just brush us aside and get on with it. That particular risk, the existential threat, is a place where people will cooperate. And that's because we're all in the same boat. Nobody wants these AIs to take over from people. And so the Chinese Communist Party doesn't want AIs to be in control. It wants the Chinese Communist Party to be in control.
I think powerful technologies in of themselves are kind of like neutral. They could go good or bad. depending on what we as society decide to do with them. And I think AI is just the latest example of that in that case. Maybe it's going to be the most powerful thing and most important that we get right. But it's also, on the optimistic end, I think it's one of the challenges, it's the only challenge I can think of that could be useful to address the other challenges if we get it right. So, so that's the key. I don't know, democracy and other things, it's a bit out of scope. Maybe it's for the economists to talk about.
Well, I'll just say, I think AI is an informational tool, and it will be most useful and most enriching for us in every respect if it's useful, reliable, and enabling information for everybody. Not just for somebody sitting at top to manipulate others, but enabling for citizens, for example, enabling for workers of different skills to do their tasks. All of those are aspects of democratization, but we still have a long way to go for that sort of tool to be available in a widespread way and not be manipulable.
Let's go for another question now from our audience. Al Katerini Papathanasiou from the Stockholm.
Before he goes on, I want to say that is something that I've also been thinking about, especially with ChatGPT, because when ChatGPT first dropped, I was hesitant to use it. I like a lot of things. I think I'm a bit of a late adopter to things. I can fall into a habit of being comfortable. But when I did use it, I recognized how extremely useful it is, right? Like, of course, we've seen the hallucinations, we've seen the misinformation. They've gotten better at fixing some of those issues, but there's undeniably a huge benefit to using it. Even when I showed it to my dad, and he was wowed by how great it was when it came to his business, and just it feeling like you could have a general conversation with this machine, and it give you human-like feedback, but also useful feedback, and that can't be understated how great that is. My always thought about it was, as big as this is going to get, as more and more people recognize how great this is dealing with your homework, your bills, your work, your personal, whatever it is, there are going to be those who are driven by profits, and they're not going to want to keep that information public forever. They're not going to want to have, as they say, a democratic access to it. If I'm in control of the world, right, and I want to maintain that control, what stops me from putting the basic one, a paywall on a service like ChatGPT? I think now you do have to pay for the upgraded version of it, right? And it was supposed to be it was supposed to originally be like a free thing, right? They wanted to put AI in the hands of the people and have it open source and everybody could innovate on it. And then something changed where, talking about OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? Where the company added a for-profit arm to OpenAI, but the whole point of that was to take the profit generated and put that into what was supposed to be the democratic nonprofit side of OpenAI. But as that continues to grow and grow, I just don't see how those who are at the top don't want to start hoarding that access to that information, because it's so extremely beneficial. And I'm just wondering what stops individuals from doing that and kind of limiting the access to those who are poor or from backgrounds that you don't generally like, so that they too can have this. It's another way to keep the advantage at the top. And at this one, I can't think, it's really hard to think of a way to overcome that big an advantage, right?
With the advances in AI, we will need to understand much better what makes us conscious, what makes us human. There might be some stumbling blocks that will make us delve deeper into some of these questions. But even if advances in AI are very fast, we will need to question our own existence and what makes that more meaningful.
Certainly we need ethics. But the kind of philosophy we don't need, I think, is philosophers talking about consciousness and sentience and subjective experience. I think understanding those is a scientific problem and we'll be better off without philosophers.
Anybody else on this? No?
Okay, I remember hearing this, and I'm not going to dive into it too deep because I don't want to misunderstand what he is saying, but I thought that was fascinating that he was saying that consciousness, and let me just hear his words one more time, because I'm thinking he's saying that consciousness...
But the kind of philosophy we don't need, I think, is philosophers talking about consciousness and sentience and subjective experience. I think understanding those is a scientific problem and we'll be better off without philosophers.
That is such a bold take. I know they laugh after that, but that being a scientific thing, so what makes you and I human? What makes us us? Not being something that should be debated by individuals who question life, whose sole purpose in life is to question everything about it and why we feel the way we think, and the whole I think therefore I am. None of that. He wants to boil it down to numbers and math and formulas to determine what it is to be human, what it means to have consciousness. That's a really interesting take. In one hand, I can see why he would then go on to create modern AI, or the neural framework for modern AI, because he believes it is nothing more than electrical pathways and, you know, firing off of signals. And now it makes sense why he was able to do what he did. But on the other hand, for those of us who are religious or spiritual, or just believe that we're more than just, you know, a massive tissue or whatever the brain is sitting up here controlling this fleshy thing, that's a little bit interesting a take to have, because I would think most people would argue that philosophers are very much needed when it comes to understanding the human consciousness. This is why people go to places like Tibet or Buddhist temples to meditate and to reflect, because one, people don't want to be just a scientific thing to be examined and broken down to, right? That's when you start getting into like clones. There's that, oh my God. So there's that movie, Never Let Me Go, or the book, right? By Ishigo, I think is his name, Never Let Me Go. And the whole premise of it is, you know, I don't want to spoil it for y'all. Spoilers. If you don't want to hear about the spoilers for Let Me Go, skip forward now. I think the movie came out in 2010. But basically, right, you got a group of teenagers, or you get a group of people and you watch them grow up in this boarding school where they come to find out that they're clones, and their sole purpose is to be basically bodies to be harvested. Their organs are to be harvested for the people that they were cloned from. And there's this rumor that if they are to create art or something beautiful and show it to this mysterious person, they could get a deference, which would allow them to basically go on to live their lives. And, you know, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it gets to the question of what is humanity. And I think it's dangerous when you start saying that humanity is just something that can be boiled down to science. That's how you end up in this situation where you're in a world where we can clone people and they be nothing but organ suits, be nothing but something to use and harvest from, because they're not actually human. There's some cells that we threw together and they're an equation that equaled person. You know what I'm saying? So that's when you need the philosophers to come in and go like, well, okay, I think, therefore, blah, right? Or, you know, in the case of the movie or the book, I create a piece of art which shows that, you know, I feel. And if I feel, am I not human? Am I not just like you? Do I not deserve a shot at real life and not to just be something to be used? So I'm trying to be real neutral in saying that I don't like what he said, but it is interesting that he said it like that, and everybody just kind of laughs at that. But that is a dangerous road, I think, to go down when you just start looking at people as equations to be studied and dissected and possibly replicated. But maybe that's not what he meant.
And let's just get a brief idea of the research that led to the Chemistry Nobel Prize award.
The ability to figure out quickly what proteins look like and to create proteins of your own has fundamentally changed the development of chemistry, biology, and medical science. By creating the AI program AlphaFold 2, this year's chemistry laureates Demis Hassabis and John Jumper have made it possible to calculate the shape of proteins and thereby understand how the building block of life works. The second half of this year's award goes to David Baker for what's been described as the almost impossible feat of building entirely new kinds of proteins, useful not least for producing what could block the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Making new proteins can simply open up whole new worlds.
The engine of Western economies in terms of the revolution in the last 50 years has been technology and science and Silicon Valley and that sort of thing in terms of, if you wanted to, if you're an enemy of the West, you want to destabilize that. And so I think this whole social network, I don't trust technology, I don't trust any of the enterprises, I don't think that's evolved naturally. I think that's been manipulated by bad agents. And we have to be aware of that.
Which bad agents?
I think it's Russia and Iran. I don't think it's stupid to say that.
And that one's interesting to me because I don't think, I was one of the individuals that I think was wary of technology. Like I said, I'm late to adopt certain things, but that's not out of a fear, I think, instilled by a hostile country, right? Like, at the end of the day, I'm not worried about Iraq wanting to kill me specifically. Yes, I'm sure they would be happy with any American dead, but at the end of the day, I think the fear comes from more what they were hinting at earlier, which is that lack of transparency, right? That understanding that individuals at tables that we're not at are having the discussions and pushing things forward and not hearing or caring about the concerns of the populace. Everybody is so concerned with what I can do for myself or what it's going to do for my name or what it's going to do for my pocketbooks, instead of caring about, well, does the population even want this? Does the general public want it? And if they do want it, how do they want it? How do they want it implemented? Because if you have individuals who are truck drivers, right, and they're happy with their truck driving job and they're making good money with their truck driving job and they're able to take care of their family with the truck driving job, but then somebody, going back to Musk, because he's one of the biggest faces in tech right now, decides to release autonomous cars, well, he's not asking the truck drivers how they feel, and he's not taking into account that their jobs are going to be replaced. He's just giving them the answer of, hey, these things are coming, I keep working on them, and those who are worried about losing their income, well, don't worry, there'll be other jobs that will be supporting the AI. Well, of course that's going to make me distrustful of AI. You don't give a damn that I just lost something that I love. Forget that you're supposedly opening up a position for me to monitor these cars or sit in the passenger seat while this thing drives. I love driving trucks. That's what I want to do. And you've changed my world with no consideration of how I feel. And I think that's more of the distrust with technology, is that there's just never any consideration for the people's lives that are affected, because those who implement it are already rich and their lives for the most part remain the same, or they get to adopt it in a way that they want to. Their feelings are heard, but everybody else is just, well, adapt or die.
It should be pointed out that it was the response to COVID with the mRNA vaccines was truly miraculous. Yes. It was a technology that really had not been proven at all. And in very little time, because it was this thing about having a common enemy and a threat, we were able to mobilize very quickly, try something really completely new, and bring it to the point where it did a huge amount of good. So there are reasons to be optimistic that were other threats to appear, that a lot of the silliness would sort of filter out and the correct actions would be taken.
And the skeptics died.
Okay, well, on that positive.
This is where I want to push back just a little bit. And again, these individuals are in high academia, and the people around them may feel this way. The skeptics amongst high academia might have died down, but the skeptics in the everyday world who are not in these colleges and these universities did not die. They're still very much alive, and some would say that are some of the reasons that our politics have shifted the way they have shifted. I think he hit on a really good point there and kind of added to my point where you're saying that mRNA, when that came out and it was like the answer to COVID, how quickly it went through. I think that was another reminder to people that, wait a minute, we've been dealing with these diseases for the longest effing time that we've had cancer, you've got AIDS, you've got all these terrible things that are happening to people, and nobody seems to have the answer on how to cure this ish. No matter how much of billions of dollars that go to this thing, the answer is you take a pill and it may prolong your life, or it may kind of provide a little bit of soothing to the suffering, but at the end of the day, you're going to die. You're going to die a painful death or something like that, or a horrible death. But this thing comes out of nowhere that shuts down the world, and within, months, here's an answer, guys. We got it solved. It's figured out. And now, granted, the scientists are going to say, well, it's because there was something that was already in place that we had to manipulate. We didn't have to come up with a whole new vaccine. We just had to go look at something, change some proteins around, and thus, the vaccine. I get that from a intellectual perspective, but again, for the everyday person, you're not thinking like that. You're already coming from a place of distrust of the government and big pharma. And so when they see an example of somebody doing something that you haven't done to everything else that's involved suffering, all you're giving them is more ammo to distrust, which goes to the tech side of things. And you're saying that, hey, this stuff is going to, I just lost my train of thought. I had a way to correlate it with the tech thing of the distrust of it and how quickly it's going to be thrown out into the public. And there are no, the unification of humanity, I think is what he was saying, right, is going to come from the fact that it's going to be overall benefit to have AI implemented. And the skeptics of AI and the fear of AI, from what he said, is just going to die away because people are going to see the overall good. But I don't think it dies away. I think it kind of gets stamped out, right? People still have legitimate concerns. People are still going to lose livelihoods. People are still not going to be able to adapt or adopt as quickly as others. And so those skeptics don't die, but they're forced to change or I'm saying he made it sound like fizzle out, right? But they don't fizzle out. It's like a chokehold, right? You're literally choking this person until their fame extinguishes, and then we just kind of move on and pretend we don't see the dead bodies that this great technological advancement is resting upon, and that'll be it.
Physiology, and this is why it was awarded this year.
Our organs and tissues are made up of many varied types of cells. They all have identical genetic material, but different characteristics. This year's medicine laureates, Gary Rifkin and Victor Ambros, have shown how a new form of gene regulation, microRNA, is crucial in ensuring that the different cells of organisms, such as muscles or nerve cells, get the functions they need. It's already known that abnormal levels of microRNA increase the risk of cancer, but the laureates' research could lead to developing new diagnostics and treatments. For example, it could map how microRNA varies in different diseases, helping unlock prognoses for the development of diseases.
Mutations obviously can be bad because they can lead to all sorts of genetic illnesses and so on, but they're not always bad, and some are quite actually relatively insignificant, like you're colourblind, aren't you, for instance? I mean, that's a genetic mutation, isn't it?
It is, and it's a debilitating mutation for me. In the days of black and white publishing, I was king. Things were fine. And then everything became color.
But I mean, you actually wanted
not respond.
You wanted to be an electrical engineer originally, didn't you? But
well,
you
yes, I did
I
electronics.
think we're kind of approaching the end here of this video. One thing I wanted to say is that obviously this is a good example of how AI can help in medical terms, being one of the biggest industries that could use this vital piece of technology, and that it could help rapidly identify and assist geneticists and individuals like the doctor we have here in I guess it's not sequencing anymore, right? At this point, but understanding how certain genes turn on or turn off and what you would need to do to help an individual who, like in this case, is colorblind, give them their sight back. And so that is something that I am excited to see. And I think this also speaks to what I said earlier, if I didn't cut it, which is that there are those that want to see the blending of humanity and technology, and AI might be that next step to, is it called the singularity? No, I think that's something else. But basically where we become one, right? It's the cyberpunk in real time, where people are literally getting surgeries done. I mean, already people are getting surgeries done, and then where they have, you know, prosthetics or eyes that are, you know, not organic. So already that's happening, but further enhancing that process to where, you know, you have chips in your head, or just play the game Cyberpunk and you know what I mean. Technological advancement that make us more than what we are currently as humans, which I think leads to the philosophical question of, are you still human if half your body, 75% of your body is improvements made by technology, and you're using synthetic parts and, you know, things that are not organic to improve yourself? Are you still human? The scientists who said that scientists can only answer this, I don't think could come up with a solid answer, because at some point you are going to be studying nuts and bolts, and you would probably conclude that no, you're not human anymore. Versus, you know, the one who sits there and questions life would say, you know, again, I think therefore I am, but more importantly, the part of me that can't be replaced by robotics is what makes me human. Like I said, I think this is the end of the video. I highly encourage you to check out the rest of this conversation as it wraps up. It's not that much more, like 20 minutes here, right? But I thought this was a really important conversation to have with you all. I thought this was really, really, really eye-opening, in having these highly intellectual individuals sit down at a table and have a discussion. And you saw there were moments where people were not, it never got crazy, right? But there are just little bit moments where it's like, hey, I got to push back, or hey, I disagree. And I miss those conversations. Having people have dialogue that doesn't necessarily have to go into, well, your mother sucks cock behind the blah, 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 or you're really stupid, or you're dumb. No, you're dumb. I disagree with you, and this is why I disagree with you. Okay, well, I hear your point, but this is why I disagree with you. And at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that we have to come to an agreement, but we can walk away and say, like, I felt good about having the conversation. I was open and receptive to hearing what the other person had to say, but that's not what we do anymore. And part of that is probably because of social media and how quick we are to anger. And then a lot of that, I think, also is not just social media. Social media just kind of opened the door to what was already there, and allowed a lot of scary-ass, cowardly people the ability to hide, right, and say what they really felt that they would never say in the real world, but now fear no consequences and so say it online. So I guess I wouldn't say that social media made it worse. It just exposed. It gave the people an out. But I enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. There's a lot of information that was given here. I hope you go and, like I said, take the time to watch the full 52-minute Nobel Minds 2024 and come up with your own takeaways. And please drop those in the comment sections below, because I'm sure there's a lot that I missed that I would love to read from you. So please, please, please do that. It's only 52 minutes, and I feel like it flies by. So looking forward to hearing that from y'all. These are my final thoughts. I appreciate y'all for taking the time to ride with me. I look forward to seeing y'all in the next chapter. But I was your host, JLW. I don't know why I forget to say that at the end of these videos sometimes. And remember, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, because that is what we were saying at the end of these videos. I'm done.
What am I?
Can I help you, sir? Can I help you, sir?